Welcome to the Betting Pros PGA Podcast. I'm Pat Fitzmaurice, joined by Mr. Beau McBrayer. The PGA Tour heads to one of its classic courses this week, making a stop at Torrey Pines in La Jolla, California, just north of San Diego, for the Farmers Insurance Open. On today's show, we'll start with a quick recap of the American Express, then we'll serve up a full betting preview of the Farmers Insurance Open, and we'll tell you who we're betting, and we'll give you our one and done picks for the week at the end of the show. We'll keep the recap of last week's tournament especially brief because there was not a whole lot of drama. Sepp Straka, the big Austrian, is your American Express champion. Straka got off to a flying start with rounds of 65, 64, and 64. He didn't exactly stomp the accelerator on Sunday with his 2 under par 70 at the Pete Dye Stadium course, but he really didn't need a lights out round. So big was his cushion going into that final round. It was Straka's third career win on the PGA Tour, his first since the John Deere Classic in 2023. Justin Thomas finished second, 2 shots behind Straka, and Jason Day and Justin Lower finished tied for third. Any thoughts on the Amex, Beau?
Good old-fashioned putting contest, and Sepp Straka was red hot. Sepp Straka came in hot. He showed well at the Sony, so it's no wonder that we said the hot golfer was probably going to do well at the Amex, and we were right. We just didn't know that was going to be Sepp Straka. So congrats to him, but we're moving on. That tournament is not the favorite of most golf bettors.
No, definitely not. It's always kind of a hard one to peg. The chalk just doesn't show up very often, other than that Jon Rahm victory a couple years ago. But now we are onto a course that often proves to be worthy of betting chalk. It's on to the second stop of the PGA Tour's California swing, the Farmers Insurance Open. The first thing we need to mention about this event, it starts on Wednesday instead of Thursday. The PGA Tour does not want to butt up against the NFL's Championship Sunday, so this will be a Wednesday to Saturday tournament. Do not procrastinate in getting your bets in for the Farmers. This event will be played at Torrey Pines, and the South Course at Torrey Pines is an iconic American course. It has hosted majors before, just an outstanding test of golf. But one of the first 2 rounds will be played at the Torrey Pines North Course, which is not an iconic American course. The North Course typically plays about 1.5 to 2 shots easier than the South Course, although last year it played almost 3 shots easier. The North Course is a par 72 measuring 7,258 yards. It plays easy because of the par 5s, all of which are very reachable, and 2, the longest of the par 5s, only 556 yards. The other 3, 536 or shorter. We'll see pros hitting irons into these par 5s for their second shots, maybe middle irons in some cases. The par 3s are tougher. All 4 of them are longer than 200 yards, and there are 3 par 4s shorter than 400 yards here. 2 of them are under 350 and potentially drivable. Beau, I went back and looked at what the last 5 Farmers Insurance Open winners shot on the North Course: 69, 68, 67, 64, and 68. So the last 5 winners were at least 3 under par on the North Course. If you want to make any noise at the Farmers, you had best have a good round on the North Course. As for the South Course, it is a brute. It is a par 72 measuring 7,765 yards. It's a course that obviously favors the big hitters. The fairways are also narrow. I believe they're the 3rd narrowest fairways of any tour course. But the rough, at least the rough off the fairways, not overly penal. You can miss fairways and still hit greens on this course. Last week in our American Express preview, we talked about the importance of wedge and short iron play because players would be hitting so many of their approaches from 150 yards and in. This week, most of the approach shots are going to be from more than 150 yards out. Middle iron and long iron play will be critical at the Farmers Insurance Open. The greens at Torrey Pines are Poa Anua. Poa greens tend to roll inconsistently at times. I believe Torrey Pines South has been one of the hardest courses on tour in the strokes gained putting category. And if you miss these greens, good luck. There's some thick, chewy rough surrounding these greens. Bottom line, Torrey Pines South is a stern test, And by the way, we learned earlier today that Torrey Pines is also going to be hosting the Genesis Invitational in a few weeks. They're moving the Genesis from Riviera Country Club in Los Angeles because of the fires. So we are going to get a big helping of this great course over the next month. The defending Farmers Insurance Open champion is Matthieu Pavon. The Frenchman was a surprise winner last year, finishing 13 under par and making a dramatic birdie from out of a fairway bunker on the 72nd hole to beat Nikolai Højgaard by one stroke. Max Homa won here in 2023 after finishing minus 13, winning by 2 strokes over Keegan Bradley. Luke List won the Farmers in 2022, finishing minus 15 and beating Will Zalatoris in a playoff. Patrick Reed shot minus 14 to win by 5 strokes in 2021, and Mark Leishman won here in 2020 with a score of minus 15. The forecast, Beau, calls for a high of 67 on Wednesday and a high of 77 on Thursday, with winds ranging from 5 to 15 miles an hour. Then it gets chillier on the weekend with highs in the upper 50s on Friday and Saturday, and we could have some wind on the final day with the breeze expected to be 10 to 20 miles an hour. Beau, your thoughts on Torrey Pines?
Just an iconic track. It's the South Course being 3 of the 4 rounds is the main focus. But you, like you said, you can't ignore the one round that they're all going to play on the North Course. That's where you have to make your hay. At least gives you a really good head start into the weekend if you can put together a really solid sub 70 round at the North Course, because the South Course is going to push every button that you have. You're going to have to hit the ball well off the tee. Driving distance is a plus here, but we've seen guys play lights out on approach and in short game and win despite not being long hitters. Patrick Reed and Matthieu Pavon both were absolutely stellar over the last couple of years on short game and approach game. So yes, it does help to hit the ball a long way on a course that's pushing 7,800 yards. But the short game is the most important part because, like you said, the greenside rough is nasty. The greens are hard to hold, which I do think lends to a little bit more penal fairway rough. It might not be very long, and it might not prevent you from reaching the green, but holding the green, the Poa annua greens, and then putting out on those greens, that's where the challenge really is. So 1/3 plus of these approach shots are for more than 200 yards. So that's a bucket that I'm interested in, of stark contrast to last week, where you have a whole different demographic of golfers who are in play this week because the course is so different from what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, good point about the rough off the fairways. Maybe it's not as daunting as U.S. Open rough, but you do want to be able to spin it off the fairway to hold these greens. We will get to the odds in a moment, but first,
download the free Betting Pros app for iOS and Android. With Sportsbook Sync, you can automatically track your bets across all major sportsbooks in one spot. Easily monitor your bet performance by sport and bet type, including game picks, props, and parlays. Create custom betting systems to find winning trends and profitable opportunities. Get a free trial of Betting Pros Premium by downloading the app and activating your trial on the upgrade screen.
Now for the Farmers Insurance Open odds. All odds are courtesy of DraftKings. As of Monday morning, we will start with the favorites. Still no Scotty Scheffler because of his hand injury. His return is approaching, however. Colin Morikawa has also pulled out of this event. So the co-favorites are Hideki Matsuyama and Ludvig Åberg at 10-1. Tony Finau and Sungjae Im are 20-1. Keegan Bradley is 22-1. Will Zalatoris and Max Grazerman are 25-1. Jason Day is 28-1. Shane Lowry, Sahith Theegala, and Maverick McNeely are 30-1. Taylor Pendrith, Max Homa, and Kurt Kitayama are 35-1. And Siwoo Kim and Luke Clanton are 40-1. Who do you like from among the favorites, Beau?
This is a favorites front runner type of event. I wanted a little add a little to the Torrey Pines hosting the Genesis as well, is I think with the tournament having 4 rounds at the South Course, they might even make it a little tougher because the Genesis is one of those signature events. So we might see a whole different animal on the South Course for the Genesis. This week, it's going to be a little bit more manageable. The favorites are still there. I had a hard time picking between Ludvig Åberg and Hideki Matsuyama as who I would favor as a chalk pick. I landed on Åberg, but I still might get some action on Hideki with how well he's playing, and especially how well he's played these Southern California courses over his career. This one notwithstanding, the long iron approach is obviously Hideki's wheelhouse. Åberg has been streaky and he hasn't been the best scrambler, but everywhere else in his game is just so just sterling silver. He's almost perfect. And Hideki has just got all the firepower in the world. So I'm going to lean Åberg for now, but I wouldn't fault anybody if they wanted to throw 10-1 odds on Hideki Matsuyama to win this thing outright. They're both absolute locks for top 5 bets on my card. That's really where I'm starting. And then I was able to find Will Zalatoris at 28-1, and I really love that, especially with how his game has lined up with Torrey Pines in the past.
Yeah, Hideki is in fine form. Won the Century, was 16th at the Sony. He's finished 9th and 13th in his last 2 appearances at the Farmers and was 3rd here in 2019. Åberg, brief track record on tour, but he did finish 9th in his debut here last year, and he was 5th at the Century a few weeks ago. He was also 14th in strokes gained off the tee last season, so yeah, he definitely fits the course. Zalatoris, just a terrific ball striker. His last 4 Farmers Insurance Open finishes 7th, 2nd, miscut, 13th. And I think the missed cut might have been when he was dealing with the back issues. And he's coming off a 12th at the Amex. Tony Finau loves Torrey Pines. He's finished top 10 in 6 of his last 8 appearances at the Farmers Insurance Open, and one of the non-top 10 finishes over that stretch was a 13th. But he's a guy who's had trouble closing the deal.
Yeah, and he's an awful putter. Unless he catches fire with the flat stick, I just don't know how much upside he has. He also hasn't been overly great at scrambling or avoiding bogeys because of the putting coming and going as we were. Unless he is in Detroit where we don't have to worry about him. Tony Finau has, of course, the firepower to win here, but I just don't know that I would throw a bet on him. Although the odds are pretty appealing. If you're getting 20-1 on Tony Finau here, that's pretty appealing. I get it.
Yeah, and I dock the bad putters less on POA greens. I think I am less excited to bet the sharpshooter putters and more willing to bet the not great putters on POA.
Yeah, and it's a drastic difference when you filter your modeling for POA greens. Is you get an entirely different crop of golfers who might not otherwise putt well on any other surface, but they just have a knack for POA greens. And if you get a POA specialist like Willie Z, like Tony Finau, it's apparent. That's a whole different breed because they might struggle to read Bermuda or bend grass, but Poana is just a little bit unpredictable because it gets a little crusty later in the day, and it's still true, but it's also a little more shaky. Like you're not as you don't assume the ball's going to go in when it starts wobbling towards the hole on POA greens, because if it's in the late afternoon round, you pretty much can't guess at whether it's going to hold its line or not.
Yeah, you will see a lot of players shaking their heads scornfully after missed putts this week. Yes. That is a guarantee. Quick notes on a few of the other favorites. Sungjae Im missed the cut here a year ago, but in his 2 previous trips to the Farmers before the missed cut, 6th and 4th. Keegan Bradley has finished top 5 in 3 of his last 7 starts at the Farmers. Shane Lowry is a good ball striker, and if it's cold and windy on the final day, as expected, the Irishman could have a bit of an edge there if he's in contention. California native Max Homa has really shown an aptitude for Torrey Pines. He's won here in 2023, finished top 20 here in 4 of his last 5 trips. And Jason Day won here in 2018, 4 top 10s here in his last 7 years, and he has finished or is coming off a third place finish at the American Express last week. All right, Beau, let's look at some of the mid-range options. Akshay Bhatia is 45 to 1. Ben Griffin, Beau Hossler, and Aaron Rai are 50 to 1. JJ Spawn, Harry Hall, and Mark Hubbard are 55 to 1. Justin Rose, Thomas Dietrich, Daniel Berger, and Steven Yeager are 60 to 1. Michael Thorbjornsen is 65 to 1. And at 70 to 1 are Doug Gim, Austin Eckroat, Nicholas Norgard, and Mac Meisner. Do any of the mid-range plays sing to you this week, Beau?
Only one of those popped up at the very top of my model, and that was Justin Rose. Another course that demands long iron play, and Justin Rose is among the best in the world at those long irons, those mid irons approach shots. He's also a pretty good birdie maker when the conditions are tougher. He's pretty much a Torrey Pines specialist at this point, and at 60 to 1 with how he's kind of kept himself relevant on tour over the last couple of years, I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen from Justin Rose. And at 60 to 1, I think that that's kind of a misprice for his history here.
Yeah, Rose has 4 top 10s in his last 8 trips to Torrey Pines. So even when he hasn't been in great form, he's played this course pretty well. Young Mr. Akshay Bhatia finished 13th in his Farmers debut last year. Beau Hossler has 2 top 10s here in the last 5 years, although in the other 3 starts, he missed the cuts. But he is coming off a 12th place finish at the American Express. And Beau, your guy, Kurt Kitayama, shout out NorCal. Strong off the tee, tends to play tough courses well. I'm almost a little surprised you didn't mention him.
I really like his game here, but his odds are way too short for what he's been doing. 35 to 1 is just too short for me to bet on. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does make some noise here because he does have the game to fit it. Great long iron player. He's number 2 in this entire field for approach over 200 yards proximity. And he's been riding a kind of a hot putter lately. I just worry about his scrambling, his ability to get up and down if he does miss the greens. That kind of does play into a little bit of a, in the back of my mind, what worrying about Kitayama at 35 to 1 on most books. That's just too short for me to be comfortable, especially in this strong of a field. But you're right, he is a grinder that makes hay on really tough courses. It makes it look pretty easy too. Along the lines of Justin Rose, very similar player to Justin Rose, but Rose is giving me much better value for that bet.
Yeah, I hear you about the price on Kitayama, and it seems like the sports books are coming around and are starting to like him almost as much as you do, Beau. I've been sort of surprised at some of the opening odds we've seen for Kurt Kitayama this year.
They know something.
What about long shots? Is there anyone with odds of 75 to 1 or longer you find compelling?
Funny you should ask. I have 3 on my betting card this week. I will be betting pretty heavily on the favorites because that's kind of been the theme here. But starting with Gary Woodland at 90 to 1. This is a player who is recovering from literal brain surgery last year. Still ended up finishing the season pretty well, and he's looked really sharp early on this season. Gary Woodland on a course like this, a great long iron player. He's long off the tee. And if his short game can hold up, this is a guy who can absolutely win this tournament. 90 to 1 for him is just a great value to throw a few bucks on. The defending champion, Matthieu Pavon, he's the quintessential grinder. I wasn't overly surprised that he won last year, even though he wasn't really on anybody's radar to win that tournament. But we've seen since then that these types of events do favor somebody who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And Matthieu Pavon does not make very many mistakes, and that's really going to play here. 110 to 1 for a defending champion in a field that's kind of lost a little bit of its top end luster. That's just a misprice that I'm going to take advantage of. And a little deep shot on a guy who's been around a really long time. He came in at number 3 in my entire model overall. I'm going to throw a little bit on Ryan Palmer at 400 to 1. He's got great history here. And for as consistent as he is, I don't know that he'll win, but I can throw a pretty good, decent payout for a top 20 or a top 10 here. But I'm going to throw a few bucks on 400 to 1 Ryan Palmer at Torrey Pines.
Yeah, that is not a bad price for a guy who's just generally played well in California, I think,
Yeah,
over the years.
he's
Uh,
he's one of those Poana specialists.
yeah, I was shocked by the 110 to 1 odds for Matthieu Pavon. I'm taking some of that too, Beau. And, I've got to mention our guy, Jake Knapp, big
Yeah,
hitter who finished third here last year in his Farmers Insurance Open debut, 250 to 1. I have to
yeah.
get a little of that action too. So let's get to our early betting cards, Beau. Who are you betting as of now?
So I will have Ludvig Åberg at 10 to 1. I'll probably end up adding some Hideki just to feel something, because every time I've refused to bet Hideki, he burns me and wins the tournament. Even if he's not happy with his performance, he still ends up winning. But Åberg and Hideki are both getting action from me. Willie Z, Will Zalatoris at 28 to 1. And then I'm going to be sprinkling a lot of plays on Gary Woodland at 90, Matthieu Pavon at 110, and Ryan Palmer at 400. Justin Rose is one that I'm still thinking about at 60 to 1, for how much exposure I'm going to get.
So for me, as of right now, I have got Ludvig Åberg at 10 to 1. I've got Shane Lowry at 30 to 1 with a top 5 kicker at 6 to 1. Tony Finau, top 10 only. I'm betting right now, plus 190. I just think that's a good percentage play. Justin Rose, I also have a top 10 bet on at plus 450. Matthieu Pavon at 110 to 1. Not sure if I want to go top 5 or top 10. Maybe I'll just look to cash out if he's in contention into the weekend. And finally, Jake Knapp at 250 to 1 and 40 to 1 for a top 5. I like the odds on both of those bets. Now for the one and done competition, I had Siwoo Kim last week at the American Express. He tied for 51st and earned me a whopping $21,032. You had a better week.
At least he made the cut.
He did make the cut, unlike Ben On for me the previous week. You had a better week this past week, Beau. You took Max Grazerman. He tied for 7th. I know you were messaging me on Sunday hoping he could sneak into the top 5. Not to be, but still his top or his tie for 7th was good for $267,300. You're up about $400,000 on me already, Beau, but I do pick first this week. Give me the horse for the course. I will take Torrey Pines specialist Tony Finau. Who are you taking?
That's funny you should say that, but Grazerman was solo 5th until he got to the 72nd hole. And do you know what he did, Pat? He double bogeyed the 72nd hole to drop to 7th. So that cost me $250,000 right there. And so you should be down like 600,000 instead of 400,000. I'm still a little bit bitter, but yeah, Grazerman double bogeyed the very last hole of the tournament to drop from 5th to 7th. Heartbreaking. And I'm going for a horse for the course with this week as well. I'm going with Will Zalatoris, the ultimate horse for the course, and I think is playing better golf than Tony Finau so far this year.
It's a good call, and maybe I'll have to take Willie Z when we come back here for the Genesis
for
in
sure.
A few weeks. That's all for this week's Betting Pros PGA Podcast. We will be back next week with a preview of the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Until then, so long, everyone.